Okay guys, so today I want to talk about maximum recoverable volume and inflammation. So one of the main issues I see with people on steroids, and one of the main things I dealt with when I was on steroids, was constant nagging inflammation. So it didn't matter where it was. It could be the elbows, could be the knees, could be the hips, could be the back, everywhere. You know, when you're on steroids, a lot of times you are in this constantly inflamed state, and it affects your training where you can't train with as much volume as someone who has low inflammation. So I see this all the time. The guys who are enhanced have a tougher time controlling the inflammation. So injuries crop up more often that drastically limit the volume. So if we look at maximum recoverable volume, which is the overall volume or tonnage that you're able to do on a weekly basis and still recover from without getting injured, the amount that an enhanced lifter can do is oftentimes lower than a natural lifter because of the overall inflammation. So inflammation is one of the main things you want to consider before you start taking anabolic steroids, or if you're on them. If you don't keep your inflammation in check, rest assured your training is not going to be as effective. So this is one subject that I've seen a lot of times. My buddy at the gym, he has inflammation issues. A lot of my clients who are enhanced lifters as well have inflammation issues. So inflammation, in my opinion, is one of the main things that holds people back in training. If you're in this chronically inflamed state where you're dealing with constant tendonitis and just general aches and pains, that's probably something we could nip in the bud with getting health in order. So this is one of the reasons, like looking at blood work, C-reactive protein is the main inflammatory marker you're going to look at. So C-reactive protein is becoming more of a commonplace thing, but it's something doctors rarely check unless you request it. But C-reactive protein will look at the general amount of inflammation in the body. It won't tell you where it's coming from, it won't tell you what's causing it, but it's something you can look into to see where your body's at. And if we keep that as low as possible, I'm pretty confident your overall training would go better as far as the aches and pains and such. So I also think another thing that limits the maximum recoverable volume is mobility. So if mobility is lacking through any joint, whether it's the shoulder joint, hip, anything, you're going to be limited as far as the amount of volume you can handle. So that's why mobility work with my hips is something I have to do constantly to prevent my back and hips from acting up. But my overall inflammatory state is very low because I'm not on any anabolics. I'm taking a million natural supplements. I think I'm taking roughly right now like 15 supplements on a daily basis. So these things keep this in check. And then obviously not eating a ton of sugar, not eating an awful diet. So I obviously was one of the biggest proponents of eating whatever you wanted in the past. It's something I've cleaned up. I still have, you know, some ice cream in the evening or whatever, but the majority of my diet is very clean and I've cut my sugar way down. So on this last, actually a good example of this is on the last blood work I just got, my fasted insulin level was 4, whereas on the labs before there was 11. So the normal range is anywhere from 2 to 21, but generally you want that level below 8. So you want to get as insulin sensitive as possible. So going from 11 to 4 was literally just by cutting the sugar down. Sugar is very inflammatory, as are processed foods, all the things in them. So by cutting down the processed foods, by these natural supplements and things like that, and then also the mobility, I can cut the inflammation down, I can train harder, I can train more often. So I see a lot of times where bench, for instance, is a lift that responds very well to higher tonnage. So that's one where ideally you want to be training it with a ton of volume frequently and with more volume. So then bench just isn't as taxing as deadlift and squat. So one of the things, like my bench volume right now is about 45,000 pounds a week. 45,000 pounds of tonnage a week, which is very, very high. But the reason I'm able to do that and still recover is because the inflammation is low. I don't have, you know, when I was on anabolics, a good example of this was I was very limited by the amount of times I could bench because my elbow right here on the point of the elbow was chronically inflamed, constant tendonitis. And no matter what I did, you know, resting for periods of time or benching more often, I tried everything. I tried light, I tried heavy, I tried resting, I tried rolling it, I tried icing it, all the things. And all of them, you know, they may help to some degree, but it was just like putting a Band-Aid on a stab wound. It just wasn't going to work because the inflammation in my body was too high. So this is why you have to pay attention to it. And 2 natural supplements I take that kind of cut the inflammation down to some degree are boron. So one of my subscribers a few months ago recommended boron to me. I looked into it, obviously. So the main reason he said to take boron was to lower SHBG and raise free testosterone levels. So boron, I believe, binds to SHBG, which causes your free test to raise and you get stronger, period. And in most of the studies I looked into, the benefits were seen over 10 milligrams. So some studies, they say 6 milligrams even, but the general dose you're going to see online is 3 milligrams, and that's not going to do much. So you really want to go 10 plus. Now there's a product called Borotab he alerted me to. This is one of my subscribers, Nick, and I've been taking that, 30 milligrams of boron. And boron, obviously, I've noticed some strength benefits. It raises free test. But the other big thing boron does that's less reported is boron lowers C-reactive protein, the main inflammatory marker in the body, by 50%. It also lowers interleukin 6, which is a cytokine in the body, an inflammatory cytokine, by about 25%. So boron has a very drastic effect on lowering inflammation. And this could be of use to some of you guys, whether you're natural or enhanced. And then another supplement you can look into is curcumin. So curcumin is the main thing when you take turmeric. Some people take turmeric. The main thing they're trying to get out of that is curcumin. But curcumin by itself is more bioavailable. So if you look into like a full spectrum curcumin, that's probably your best bet. So those are just two examples of two supplements I take to kind of control inflammation. But the general overall inflammation in me is lower because I'm not on anabolics and my body's not in this state where there's toxins, either whether from the carrier oils of the anabolics or just the general health of yourself. Like if you're in a constantly inflamed state, your health is probably not as good as it could be. So these are considerations to make rather than just upping the dose like I used to. I used to just say, well, I need to take more of something. But you have to weigh the pros and cons, the risk reward of how much that's raising your inflammatory state of your body. And if the inflammatory states it's what's going to hold you back. So being drug-free now for the last 16 months, I'm actually able to train more often and harder than I was on, when I was on gear, because my body's not as inflamed. Simple as that. So there's things you can do, but it's one thing you really got to think about. If you can look at the blood work and try to dissect what's going on, why you're in this inflamed state, and how you can fix it, that could be the key, the main key to unlocking more progress in your training. Because if your overall tonnage on a weekly basis is 20,000 pounds on bench, you're going to be severely limited as far as your progression compared to someone like myself who's handling 40,000, 45,000 pounds. And that's not something I'm going to sustain for a very long-term approach, but for, a training block or two to be at that 45,000, tonnage area, that gives me a huge leg up as far as my foundation. Because when I start stripping volume then from 45,000 pounds, I have a lot further to go. And I can get a lot stronger. My peak can be a lot better. So that's just, and I wouldn't be able to do that with high inflammation levels. The aches and pains would show up. My elbows would kill me. My forearms would kill me. My shoulders would kill me. My pecs, everything. So inflammation is something you have to look into controlling. And that's something you should all be looking at. C-reactive protein, see what your body's doing. And if you can get that under control, if you can run less exorbitant cycles, but have less inflammation, you might be better off than just pushing more gear, because that's also going to lead to an inflamed state. So let me know what you guys think, though. This is a idea that came to mind because it's something that I used to deal with all the time, as far as knee achiness and elbow achiness and forearms and all the things in the body used to ache when I was on these cycles because I wasn't very healthy and my inflammatory state was much higher. So I just thought I'd put this video out there. I feel like it could help some people. And if you're interested in coaching, shoot me an email at prstrength1@gmail.com. Been doing it for about 9 years now, so still going strong. 11 weeks out from the meet, USPA meet. Big things are coming, guys. Thank you.